Hello, coming to you from one of the expanding cities of board gaming, Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Out of the Dust podcast. I'm your host, Action Bryce Journey. An Out of the Dust board game is a game that gets played that you hadn't previously played in a year or more. In other words, it's been a while since you last played it. But why did the game get dusty? Why did you decide to dust it off? How does the game compare to how you remembered it? Are you likely to play it more often in the future? These are the questions that we're interested in examining on Out of the Dust. In case you're tuning in for the first time, I'm the moderator of the Out of the Dust Geek List on Board Game Geek. The Out of the Dust Geek List is one of the recurring monthly geek lists on the site, joining such other popular ones like Favorite New to Me of the Month, New to Me a Year Ago, and Games Only I Played. The main focus of this podcast is highlighting some of the Out of the Dust games that I and other contributors to the Geek List have been playing. There are a few other short segments on this podcast as well, sometimes unrelated and sometimes tied in with an Out of the Dust perspective. A couple of episodes ago, while discussing the Origins Awards winners, I had occasion to mention how 2017 was, in my mind, the year of the abstract. The game that kicked off the year of the abstract for me was Tack, a game inspired by a game played in the novels of Patrick Rothfuss. I've never read any of his work, but my wife is currently pissed off at him for seemingly being content to never finish his trilogy. Tack is an elegant game of path building and has the interesting distinction of being able to be played on different sized boards. Despite this ability, my wife and I have never played on anything other than a 5x5 board because that size feels so good. Tack became my most played game of last year, racking up over 30 total plays. But they were all in the early part of the year, so the last time I played was actually an Out of the Dust play. I last played it 1 year, 1 month, and 30 days ago. My wife suggested some Tack recently to break up our obsessive plays of Gone Shun Clever, and we played best out of 3 games. The first one was a long one won by me. Then my wife won a quick one. Then I bucked the going second disadvantage with a dramatic win in the third game. Tack is great stuff and finished as one of my top 10 games of last year, has become one of my wife's all-time favorites. Let's see what a contributor has brought Out of the Dust. Jerome, username Tsar, brought Caylus Out of the Dust. He last played it 3 years and 9 months ago. He writes, Caylus is one of my early favorites. I think I played it at least 25 times, but back in the day I didn't consistently log my plays. And most plays probably were before I created my BGG account in June 2006. I played it at all player counts and liked it most at 2 to 3 players, least at 5 players due to downtime and the huge Scrooge factors. But in the end it was a cunning game, the mother of all worker placements. Newer, quicker, sweeter-looking games took over and Caylus became forgotten. I played it once more almost 4 years ago, and when a friend visited me this month, we decided to blow off the dust and play it for the first time against each other. It wasn't a very positive experience. In the first turn already, he denied me to build the stuff I wanted to, and from then on our focus was more on blocking than building. Oh, I won, but wasn't able to build any of the prestige buildings, so I lowered my rating from 8 to 6. It's still a good game, but the passive aggression of blocking to such a degree that victory is denied gives more bitter aftertaste. On hindsight, this is a mean worker placement game, causing more frustration than fun. Thanks for the contribution, Jerome. I have to admit I had a similar experience with Caylus earlier in the year. I don't think this game has aged well, and wound up giving it away in the Pay It Forward Geek List after my most recent play. Reaction segment time! It's been a good month for questionable Kickstarters this month. Many people may have heard of the controversial projects Dr. Horrible Sing-Along Blog, the board game, and Overturn, 2 projects fraught with problems from the get-go. To provide a quick summary of the controversy with both games, the creators of the Dr. Horrible game never bothered to get rights to use the IP for the game. After examining the project closely, I don't believe there was any malicious intent with this oversight. I don't think the creators were purposely trying to pull one over on potential backers. I just think they were completely clueless about what they should have done, naive about how a Kickstarter should be run, and were totally adept and unqualified to be running a Kickstarter in the first place. The project was ultimately cancelled once this significant oversight was brought to light, and I suspect we're probably better off without this game. If the creator's incompetence in this matter is any indication, then honestly, we've probably been saved from a really bad game. But if anyone wants a good laugh, go look up the project on Kickstarter and check out the ridiculous art they had lined up for the game. So, probably no malicious intent with that campaign, but the same cannot be said for the Overturn campaign. This campaign garnered a lot of attention when it launched, and racked up some impressive big bucks and pledges. It's a dungeon crawl game, and there were a lot of nice pics of detailed mini-models on display that got a lot of people excited. But then the rulebook was posted for the game, and some observant person, upon reading it, thought, "Hey, this rulebook seems awfully familiar." So this person went to their collection, pulled Massive Darkness off the shelf, took a look at that rulebook, and realized, hey, these are the same rules. Now make no mistake, I'm not talking about a game that is inspired by the rule set of another game. No, I'm talking about word-for-word direct copy and paste plagiarism. It's the sort of thing I'd give a student a 0 on and make them do the whole thing over from scratch in the college composition classes I teach. When confronted with this plagiarism, the campaign creators were completely silent. Further investigation revealed the company profile, bio, shipping policy, refund policy, and other elements of the project page were all copied directly from other companies. Very suspicious stuff, that. But just to erase any doubts that this project was illegitimate, it was discovered that the creators also operated a fake construction company in Canada that was involved in scamming the public. Once this became known, finally, with only a day before the campaign was due to wrap up, it was suspended instead. Phew! While both of these campaigns were still operating, the outcry from backers and observers was universally pro-consumer. People were genuinely interested in warning backers about the suspicious nature of these campaigns and the red flags that were accompanying them. A lot of people have been burned by the occasional Kickstarter project from time to time in the past, and there's a desirable sense of users wanting to keep an eye on each other's backs when a project that doesn't look quite right comes along. No one spoke up against the people warning others, but then, in the wake of the cancellation of both of these projects, I noticed something both interesting and disturbing happen. Multiple voices were raised decrying the mob mentality that got these projects cancelled. Do we want Kickstarter to be ruled by the tyranny of the majority? This is a dangerous precedent to set, where a project can be cancelled due to whining and complaining. What the fish heads? The first time I saw one of these types of comments, I assumed it was just an isolated lunatic. But then I kept seeing these types of comments, and it was stunning! Were these people not paying attention or something? Where were these people during the campaign when the accusations were being made? It has struck me as being really weird that they are only making themselves be heard after the campaigns have been cancelled or suspended. I can only assume that, yes, these people weren't paying attention. So let us all rest assured, it's a good thing these two particular projects are no longer with us, and it's a good thing that Kickstarter has developed into a community that watches out for each other. There's no danger or imminent threat in that. It makes me feel a lot more confident in backing projects if I know that the community in general is doing research to make sure the projects are legitimate. I, for one, see nothing but positive possibilities in a platform that has evolved this way. Turning now to the What Have I Been Playing segment, my wife and I finished our campaign of Charterstone. Fair warning, there will probably be spoilers mentioned. You can skip ahead to the next section if you like. I'm not the type of person who believes in the sanctity of spoilers myself, nor do I believe in a statute to limitations before spilling them. So anyway, in the minds of many people, myself included, this was the most anticipated game of 2017. Jamie Stegmaier makes a legacy game. Count me in! After the pre-order was fulfilled, I saved the game for Christmas, which became something of a legacy game Christmas for me. Besides Charterstone, my cats also got me Pandemic Legacy Season 2, Dragonfire, and Gloomhaven for Christmas. My wife and I hit Pandemic Legacy Season 2 first, then did Dragonfire, and I've been soloing Gloomhaven, as I mentioned in last week's episode. That just left Charterstone from the Legacy Christmas to get to. And now, after having played it, you can count me among the camp that was not disappointed. There has been some division in how Charterstone has been received amongst gamers. Not to the negative degree that Seafall was received, but there has been a vocal camp of gamers that were not impressed with the game. Fortunately, their experience was not mine, nor my wife's. We both enjoyed it a lot. It's not as magical as Pandemic Legacy, but I had a lot of fun with it. Mechanically, I appreciated how much it felt like a Jamie Stegmaier game. It's got that bumping worker placement mechanic that he likes so much, and it's got the unique worker abilities in the form of the minions that he originally featured in the Tuscany expansion for viticulture. In fact, that was both me and my wife's favorite part of the game, the minions. Those guys were all lots of fun, and is a particularly engaging part of the game in finding ways to use them most effectively. Perhaps my only disappointment was that so much of the game content, including many of the minion types, weren't unlocked until close to the end of the campaign. During the campaign, my wife and I only ever unlocked a couple of different advancement card types, and it wasn't until that big, "if you haven't unlocked this series of crates yet, do so now," moments that we got to the others. With that in mind, I'm pretty interested in exploring the game further beyond the campaign and unlocking more content just for fun. My wife is less interested in that aspect, but she does want to play it again with our 8-year-old son Luke. Luke is very interested in playing this game with us. He kept seeing the game set up and wanting to stay up late past his bedtime to play with us. He's very excited about the prospect of playing a game where he gets to put stickers on the board. So it looks like I'll be investing in a recharge pack sometime. Fortunately, those keep getting more and more affordable. My wife's only disappointment with the game was how little impact our choices seemed to make in the story of the game. Now, I actually found the story itself pretty interesting, and the big reveal at the end when the Forever King wants to take over the Winter's body was a genuinely surprising moment. But it did seem like that no matter if we made him happy or sad during the course of the game, that the outcome of the story would have been the same. I do like the potential replayability of the different endgame campaign scoring cards, though. I think I paid attention to those a little more than my wife, and that wound up being the difference in who won or lost the campaign. We did not play with an automa, by the way. I love Jamie's automas for solo games, but generally speaking, automa players in multiplayer games have left a lot to be desired across the pantheon of board games. So we were never really tempted to add one or more, and I don't feel like we missed out on anything by not. We were very content to just enjoy the exploration and village building of the game. When it came time to tally up final scores, I wound up winning by less than 10 points. That impressed me because it speaks to the balance of the game, which is a very difficult thing to maintain across an entire campaign. In the end, even though my wife won more games of the campaign than I did, my greater focus on trying out different personas, which wound up being worth a lot of points on our endgame scoring card, made the very slightest of differences in the overall outcome. Obscure Bryce Game segment time. This week I'm going to tell you about Beowulf, the movie board game. You see, there are actually 2 Beowulf games, one based on the epic poem called Beowulf the Legend, and the one I'll discuss today based on the movie based on the epic poem. Both games are pretty obscure, and I'll talk about the legend next week. I got Beowulf the movie board game as part of a huge lot of games I acquired from a local gamer downsizing his collection in exchange for 15,000 geek gold, the currency of BGG. In real-world dollars, I wound up adding a couple of card trunks full of games to my collection for about $6 worth of geek gold each. They were really high-quality profile and value games, too. It's the type of deal you only get once in your life, and you have to jump at it when the opportunity presents itself. I sold on most of the war games that came with the lot, which funded my convention attendance and Kickstarters for a couple of years. But I kept most of the board games in my collection, and it's taken 4 or 5 years to get them all off my unplayed shelf. Beowulf the movie board game was the second to the last game still on the unplayed shelf from this lot, which means I just have one left, which I'm really excited about. Anyway, Beowulf the movie board game is an obscure Reiner Knizia tile-laying game. It's a re-implementation of his more famous Kingdoms. But after having played both Beowulf the movie board game and Kingdoms, I think Beowulf the movie board game is the far superior game. Here's how it works. Players alternate drawing and playing a tile to the board from a hand of tiles. Instead of playing a tile, a player can place one of their scoring pieces, which have values between 1 and 4. The tiles have both positive and negative points on them, and at the end of an act, players sum the value